couple of seconds here.
Cool. It says on the air on my screen.
Okay, good. All right, let's do it. All right, so today I'm here with
Cool.
Youakim. I suppose I can call you a pretty close friend now. We've been working together for like
Yeah.
6 months or whatever. We've seen each other, and basically, I'm gonna give the word over to you pretty soon, Gio. But basically, you're helping me personally with my performance, my health, my training, my workouts. Um, but please just let people know kind of who you are and what you do and where you're from.
Sure, man. So I live in London, as you guys could probably tell by the accent. And I'm an online health coach, and I specifically help entrepreneurs improve their focus, mental clarity, and productivity by optimizing their health. And as a result of becoming healthier entrepreneurs, they become better entrepreneurs in their business, which allows them to work better, more productively, and therefore, make more money in the long run. And so that's why I'm here, because it's also a big issue that I've noticed of as many of the people watching this are gonna know, when you're obsessed with everything business and all you can think about is your business, certain things fall to the wayside, and one of those things is your health because it's not something you take into big consideration. And when I say you, I mean you in the general sense, because it can be so easy with, okay, what do I have to do right now in the short term to make X amount of money, but as opposed to looking at the long term play and whereby keeping your health in check is one of the best ways. And actually, there's a lot of very, very well respected people who are big proponents of this, Joe Rogan being one of those, who is a person who is very, very successful in business and keeps their health in the highest of regards because you can perform better. And as a result, the decisions you make are going to be better. You can do more work more effectively. And as a result, it's a very clear equation. So, as I said, I'm based out of London and I help clients all around the world, Max being one of them. And yeah, I've been working with Max for, you said how long now? 5 months? 6 months? It's
Yeah, it's
been
like
a long
yeah,
time.
yeah, 5 or 6
Yeah,
months,
it's
and
been
we're
a
gonna
pleasure.
continue to work together for a long time ahead as well. Like and like
hundred
working with
percent.
working with you has been one of those services where you kind of when I went into it, it was like, oh, I think I know this stuff pretty well myself. And then we start working together, and then I realize I don't know shit about it at all. And now it's like one of those services where it's like I can't imagine like being without it really,
Yeah.
because the and we can dive into kind of the specifics or what the benefits are for entrepreneurs when they start to prioritize themselves and give more time to their health and so on, and how that actually results in more money in their bank account and better results for their clients and so on and so forth. But I think I think you told me your story when you traveled from, or maybe you told it before as well. But you basically told me about your story, how you got into this, and I think stories are very
Yeah.
powerful. So I think it would be awesome if you could share to people as well, kind of your story,
Sure.
how you got into this and how this has benefited your life. And yeah,
Sure. Funnily enough, I think I actually told you this story for the first time on our first call. On our first call, when I was kind of explaining the service and everything, and how I got into it, and how I sort of based my research, and the personal experience that I based my research off of. And the primary ones were the fact that my health was all out of whack, and I was in a pretty bad place. Not physically, because I always kept in good shape since I was pretty young. I've had good physique, abs, muscular physique, whatever it may be, and I had this perception of myself that I was a healthy guy. I look healthy, therefore I am healthy, right? But it wasn't necessarily the case. My sleep was all out of whack. My anxiety was terrible, and I was having pretty bad digestive problems to where I was having, really foggy sort of mental state. I couldn't think properly. I couldn't work. I couldn't focus. As I said, anxiety. Even though I was in good physical shape, lean, muscular, I had this belly that would stick out, and it was very, very uncomfortable. And so the first kind of point of research that I delved into, just to kind of fix my own problem, because I went to a bunch of different doctors and they couldn't really figure out what it was delving into gut health, sort of researching that, the implications of that, the fundamentals of fixing that. And obviously, gut health is very, very wide and detailed, and there's a lot of variables that go on with it. So I'm by no means a gut health expert, but I can comfortably coach people on gut health and how to improve that for mental clarity. And so that was the first thing I went down. And then as a result, I started looking at sleep. I always used to view sleep in the same way that a lot of entrepreneurs do, and a lot of people in general, just hardworking people, as kind of a thing that your body does, but not really that important. So if you can do less of it, it's good because you have more time in the day to work or whatever it may be. I quickly found out that was wrong. Spent a very long time delving into that research, looking at the best protocols for improving that. I think a lot of people now are now catching on. It's kind of a trendy thing in the sort of modern social media space of looking at health and whatnot. Um, because of people like Andrew Huberman, for example, even Joe Rogan plays a part in it. But so I dove into the science around that, and then fitness and things of that nature, nutrition um, and exercise, for example, were things that I always did. But tailoring nutrition to mental performance was something that I delved into later when I was dealing with all my personal issues, which is, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you basically went from like feeling like having anxiety and like having brain fog, as you mentioned as well, like feeling really bad, to like getting that crazy reaction or that crazy experience that you could actually feel good by just improving
Oh, yeah.
your health, essentially by improving your diet and so on and so forth. Yeah, cool.
Oh, yeah. In a couple of weeks. And then I started to sort of catch on to various trends of seeing a lot of the big entrepreneurs in the space. This is later back, like Gary Vee, for example, and just the overall grind until you sort of become rich mentality. And that didn't seem very sustainable to me. So I started thinking of different ways, or I started diving into that, and I saw a market for entrepreneurs that was, not tapped into really, whereby a lot of entrepreneurs had the same mindset, but it was actually deteriorating their business as opposed to helping.
Yeah. Awesome. So, like, if we just dive into like benefits, because like this topic about like health and like sleep, diet, and exercise, and it was certainly like a topic for me before I started working with you. That it's like I've already heard about this. Yeah, I know that I should sleep. I know that I should fix my diet. I know that I should work out and so on and so forth. But and so I think a lot of people think that they kind of know what it's all about, but they really don't. Like I was before I started working with you as well. I had an Aura ring. I fixed the Whoop band as we did as well. I started to track it. I had my sheet, and I was like, oh, okay, now I kind of know this, and then I kind of put it on the wayside, and I didn't really care about it that much. But then when I started working with you, I realized that there's so many more things that you can do. And like, so maybe it's interesting for people just to kind of talk about like specific things that you like normally do with a client to like
Yeah,
help them to improve. Yeah.
yeah, sure. So the number one KPI, like the number one key performance indicator that I look towards in people's health, is not necessarily a tangible one. It's more of an intangible one, being the way they feel. If they feel mentally clear, productive, high energy, and happy on a daily basis, they're going to be able to work better. And so I'm doing my job correctly. The There are, as you mentioned, rightly so, there are many pillars that go into this. One of the key ones, and this is the first one that I address, is almost always circadian rhythm. Now, the circadian rhythm, I don't want to get too technical or too confusing, but the circadian rhythm is essentially your body clock. Why at some points do you feel hungry, at some points you feel sleepy, at some points you feel tired, high energy. The way you feel on a daily basis is directly linked and directly um, impacted by your circadian rhythm. And so that's the first thing that I start to look at. So, primarily speaking, the way you influence that and the way you strengthen your circadian rhythm so everything is working efficiently is by setting up consistent timings for the sort of main pillars of your day. And what I mean by that are wake up time, sleep time, times you eat, and times you train. Those are going to be the most significant indicators, like external indicators, that will directly impact the way you feel and your circadian rhythm as your body clock. So, getting consistent sleep and wake times based on the individual sleep chronotype. And now I'm saying a lot of long, confusing words, but I'm going to dissect them down. So, a sleep chronotype is essentially your genetic kind of code. It's dictated by your genes, whether you are a morning person, an evening person, or just kind of in between, which is where most people sit. And as a result, we set up the correct sort of wake up times and sleep times to allow, my client or whoever it may be, if anyone's watching, you want to pick those times to allow you to get, you know, 7.5, 8, 9 hours of sleep, but then also wake up at the same time every single day. That's going to be the first main pillar. And you can do that either by asking yourself, okay, am I a morning person? Do I work better in the morning or do I work better at night? If you work better at night, you're probably going to want to sleep a bit later. And so as a result, you want to wake up a bit later. As long as you're consistent with that, that's absolutely fine. If you're a morning person, let's say you wake up at 6 a.m., that's great. But now you need to sleep at 10 p.m. Or let's say if you really want to push it and everything is dialed in and you can get good sleep in less time, then 11 p.m. and that's kind of pushing it late. But setting those up and sticking as consistent as you can to them is the number one driver in terms of setting the foundation for energy, for mental clarity, and things of that nature. So that's the first thing, is the setting of the sleep and wake times to strengthen your circadian rhythm. The next thing is incorporating workout times consistently throughout the week and at the roughly the same time throughout the day. And then also meal timings. So if you can, obviously some people, depending on different circumstances, can't eat at the same time every single day, but making that as close as you can is going to not only improve your sleep, but it's directly going to improve your brain signaling of different hormones and neurotransmitters that are directly going to link towards you feeling energized, awake, and so on and so forth on a daily basis. So that's the first thing. I know I talked a lot about that, but it's quite a complex thing. So it's important to understand the ins and outs. So number one, we said circadian rhythm, pick the times for the sort of significant daily actions. And obviously you work in between those in your deep work blocks. The next thing would be optimizing sort of the sleep environment, because the way I view it, at least, is health is very much a pyramid where sleep is by far the most important foundation. Then you have nutrition, and then you have sort of exercise. Obviously, as you know, Max, within those sort of pillars of health, there's many different components, but those are sort of the main categories, I guess you could look at them by. And with bad sleep, everything else falls apart. So actually, when you sleep bad, your choices in nutrition have actually scientifically been shown to be worse. You've been shown to put on more weight, be more sort of mentally unstable, more sort of mental health conditions, etc., etc. You can't work as well. You're not as intelligent. You're not as attractive. You don't perform as well in the gym. Everything falls out of whack. So even if you have dialed in nutrition and dialed in training, with bad sleep, it all falls apart. Then, so by doing that, we want to look at what are the best protocols that we can put in place for each person to improve their sleep the fastest or the most efficient. What do I mean by that? I mean, what we have to analyze and assess what exactly how exactly you can improve your sleep. Excuse me, I'm stuttering a little bit. And then we implement those. So with most people, these are the main sort of action items I'm going to run through now. The first one is to avoid all food 4 hours before bed. After 4 hours, whatever food you intake, especially if it's a bigger meal, is severely going to impact the way you can sleep, and as a result, the way you perform the next day. So meals cut off 4 hours before bed. Then we want to eliminate or avoid blue light as much as possible. So overhead lights, this lighting that I'm using here, you want to avoid those and start to dim the lights. Get an app that I really enjoy on computers called Flux, F.lux, and that will sort of take away some of the blue light on the monitor. And things of that nature to avoid blue light. Also, wearing blue light blockers is another thing. Max already had those when Max came on board, so we started implementing those more religiously. And then it would be, as I said, the circadian rhythm, but then also optimizing the bedroom. So making sure the bedroom is cool, making sure it's quiet, it's dark, and things of that nature. Those are sort of the key pillars of optimizing sleep. Namely the meals and avoiding blue light before bed are really, really key. But there's also more components to that. And, I can explain them now, Max, if you want me to, but I've also explained them on the course as well in decent depth. So that's,
yeah. Because that can be like a good thing to mention as well, that basically everything that you talk about right now are in the Free SMMA course. You have a complete module for yourself where you talk about all of this stuff. But so,
for the most part.
Yeah, so basically sleep is like the fundamental base thing. And the way I see it is that you sit on a ton of knowledge regarding the sleep, diet, and exercise, but then when you get a new client, you kind of look at that client. For me, for example, when I started working with you, it was like August or something like that. I'd just been on a vacation. I added some extra kilos of fat on myself. I was kind of stressed out working with my clients. And kind of the first thing that we did, at least, was going through the sleep, as you just said, to get that in order, but also kind of identifying what goals that specific client that you have that you're working with. I assume, do they want to like lose some fat, or do they want to gain muscle, or do they want to do both? And then we started to kind of implement certain practices for that. So because there's so many things that you help with, and I don't really know where we should begin, but it's, if we just talk to like the entrepreneur who like, they're like, as you said in the beginning of the call, they don't really prioritize this stuff, right? Because they just want to work in their business, and they want to make more money, get more clients, get better results for their clients. And then when it comes to health and sleep, they're like, I can do that late, like in 5 years and 10 years when I made my money, I can start doing that. But what I would like you to kind of talk a little bit more upon is like, how does this actually help people to make more money, like now, like save time? We can talk about maybe like meal prep or whatever it might be, or more focus, etc. Yeah.
So yeah, let's run through that because there's a lot of different components involved in that. Main one that actually I used to pin as a core premise of my offer, not so much anymore because it's still relevant, but there's a lot of nuances there, is brain fog. And it's something that if you're not prioritizing sleep, as I mentioned, if you're not prioritizing your health in general, and you just think, okay, I'll do that later on when I make my money, cool. Now I'll just, I'll eat like shit. I won't train. I'll stay inside. I'll just work 24/7 and then, maybe sleep 5-6 hours. A very common thing that a lot of people don't even know they have until they cure it is brain fog, whereby making decisions is much slower. You can't really think properly. Your motivation to work isn't there as much as it should be. And it's those days where, Max, you're going to know this. I know this. Everyone watching this is going to know this. There's days where it's a lot easier to get stuff done than other days. And if things aren't dialed in, you're going to let those days slip where you don't really feel like it. And you're just losing precious time. So overall, you can just say, you know what, I'll prioritize my health later down the line. But the problem is that you're losing days in the short term, and those add up. So long term, the entrepreneur who's optimized for his health, who feels great 24/7, who can constantly show up to work, perform at their best. So in that time, perform potentially more work or more efficient work than another entrepreneur did who doesn't take care of their health did in a longer period of time. So you're saving time, actually, you're working better, you're getting more done, and the decisions you're making are of a higher quality.
Yes,
and that's a very big thing.
That's a big one, right? Like the decision making. I would take it as far as say that like when you have brain fog, it's almost like you're operating as a human being without a brain, because you're just like walking around like a zombie, right? And then you're you're expecting to run a really good business, or if you're starting business from scratch, you're thinking that you're going to be able to run the best business there is, but you're feeling like shit yourself, and your brain is not functioning really. And then you fix your health and you fix your brain, and you start to realize that, hey, I'm actually getting I can start to use my intuition better, I get ideas better, I can focus easier, I can sit down and make plans much easier, and because of that you start to take better decisions that ultimately leads to better results for your clients, more money in your bank account, and all of this stuff. So in its essence, it basically
100%.
begins with just taking care of yourself, especially if you're leading a business, right?
100%. And also, how does it look when you get on a sales call with a client, you get on a check-in call with a client, and mentally you're just not there? Yeah. You're slow on your words. You can't think of good responses. The responses you give aren't sharp. That doesn't look good on you or your business. And so fixing that, if you can eliminate that, and you become this optimized machine. It's not just I'll be healthier and I'll live longer and I'll feel better. It's the impression you give to other people is substantially better. It is a substantially better experience and a substantially better impression that you're giving off. But it's not just that. It's also a personal thing, right? Like brain fog, you may think it's worth it to essentially give up the health now, make the money, and then when you're 40, let's just say, you start to really then dial in, get in shape. First of all, it's a lot harder to do it then. Second of all, there's a lot of studies that show when you optimize and what's the word I'm looking for? When you if you've been in good shape or in good health once or twice in your life prior to, let's say, the middle ages of 40, 50, you are far more likely to not only live longer in your life, have an extended longevity of life, but also you're far more likely to be in good shape and have a stronger immune system throughout your entire life. And as an entrepreneur, again, that's another key factor. If you're always getting sick, or if when you get sick, you don't recover quickly, I mean, that's terrible. Imagine you lose 2 or 3 weeks because you fell ill and you couldn't recover. If you're taking care of, and those are directly linked to your sleep, directly linked to your nutrition, directly linked to your gut health. Another thing that Max and I, if you're, I think you'll be okay with me sharing this, is we're now looking at getting your bloods done. And getting your blood work done is also a key thing that we actually intended to do way before, but then we got caught up with me coming out to Sweden, and for whatever reason, it never really got done. So we're doing that now. All these different things are key towards performing better and being a better person. But again, those things don't necessarily need to happen. The extra stuff, the foundational steps you can take of setting your circadian rhythm we talked about a couple minutes ago, getting your sleep in order, sleeping better, you are directly going to positively impact all health markers of your body by just sleeping better. You're going to lose what if you're currently overweight and sleeping badly. Just by sleeping more, you will increase or you will decrease your weight. You will increase weight loss. You will increase energy, so you'll be able to move more, burn more calories. You'll make better decisions in your food, etc., etc. So I know I'm going off on a lot of different tangents,
No,
but
it's
because
interesting.
this stuff is because this stuff is so multi-dimensional. There are so many things towards being an entrepreneur, as you know, Max. Yes, sure, hitting your sort of sales KPIs, let's say, or depending on the stage you're at in your business. But let's say earlier on, and you're really trying to hit outreach, hitting those KPIs, you may think, okay, I'll sacrifice on X, Y, and on X, Y, and Z in terms of my health to hit those KPIs. But the problem is you have to look at it long term, especially at the beginning. Let's say people doing I'm not sure what the viewership of this live stream is going to be, if it's mostly people in the course, but I'm guessing it's mostly people starting out, or maybe in the earlier stages whereby they're still doing some manual outreach or hiring people to do that. If you can't think, or if you mentally are tired, you are so far, because let's be real, not many people enjoy hitting sales KPIs. It's a fairly monotone task, but it's something that needs to get done. But if you are just slower and you're not feeling good mentally because you haven't slept or you haven't taken care of yourself, how do you think you are going to be able to hit those sales KPIs with efficiency? If you do cold calling, how do you trust yourself to be able to talk well on the phone? If you do email, or if you do any kind of different outreach methods and you have to write sort of sales scripts on that, how do you expect to come up with the best and most coherent sales letters and sales scripts if you aren't taken care of in other regards? Now, again, I went on another tangent there because I keep getting these ideas that come to me and I don't want to let them fly. But I'll leave it back to you to see where you want to guide this conversation.
Yeah, but you basically said like multidimensionals, right? And I wrote that down because that's kind of how I experienced it. It's like once you fix your health, it's like a magical thing that happens because everything else just falls into place. You're like, now I'm actually feeling better. So now my sales is working better. And now I'm getting more clients. I'm doing better results for my clients because I'm making better decisions. And everything just starts working together when you get yourself in order and in check, essentially. So one question I had for you was like, because as you said, most of the people watching this live stream will mostly be the one in the course, or people starting their agency or their business and want to run it and grow it. And I think it's very common for people that they want to learn the skills, you want to learn the softwares, you want to learn the ads and all of that stuff, and you don't think about the health as much. But I would actually argue that it's maybe, or certainly more important, to get yourself in order first and your mindset in order first, and then if you apply the skills on top of that, it's going to be a heck of a lot more powerful than if you don't do it, essentially. So, yeah.
And
what would be your take on that?
Just to double down on that, it's actually a very, very interesting point you make. And the way I think about it, and I was speaking to a friend of mine, and he pointed out to me this way, and I found it very interesting, is if you're starting a business, let's say, and this will apply to some people, but not to others. It depends on different people and their mentalities and whatnot. But if you're starting a business and let's say you're not in a situation where desperation is high and you need to make it work at all costs, if not you literally cannot eat, because there you are going to make anything to make it happen, and that's a slightly different situation. I'm talking about mostly people who are at a kind of comfortable place in their life, but could if they started a business it would be absolutely life changing. For these people, I think health is one of the most important things, because of the fact that a business is almost like, especially in the beginning stages, it's almost like a child. You have to kind of do everything to make sure it stays alive and to make sure it grows up to be, very a very prosperous business and a very well-run organization. So it's almost like a child in the beginning stages where you have to give it all of your attention. But the problem is, right, is it's going to be very hard to respect yourself enough to take care of that entity in the best way possible if you don't respect yourself enough to go ahead and take care of yourself, to be in the best frame of mind, to also have the discipline to say yes and to say no to certain things. For example, in your health, to say, okay, I need to go to sleep now, I need to get my hours of sleep. That takes discipline in some cases.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, I need to work out. That takes discipline, and that's a form of personal development that is greatly beneficial in my eyes to building a business. And if you've shown a track record of doing things that are hard, or not that are hard, but that are, that aren't convenient and they require discipline, like training, like eating well. It's so easy to eat. For myself, chocolate is the thing that gets me. It's so easy just to go to the store and eat 10 chocolate bars. But saying no and choosing a healthy form of carbs, like fruit, for example, maybe it's not as appealing, but that takes discipline, and that discipline directly translates, in my opinion, to your business, especially when you're in the starting out phases. Obviously, later on, there's different variables that come into play, but in the beginning phases, having that discipline and having shown a track record of discipline in yourself will carry over not only to your business, but also other areas of your personal life.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I have some more questions for you as well. It's super interesting,
Yeah.
but I got a question here in the chat as well. And there's a guy
Mm.
or girl asking, any thoughts on meditation, Gio?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even realize there was a chat. Okay, cool. I just pulled it up now. So meditation, yes, I'm a big proponent of meditation myself. And there's actually different things that you can, meditation falls into many different buckets. But for example, Max does a form of meditation that I previously had never encountered or never had experience with, which is transcendental meditation. That's not something I particularly coach. So, that's your topic, Max, if you want to touch in on that. But when I think of meditation, I think of, and I think most people do as well, is the traditional form of breath work, clearing your mind, focusing on that for extended periods of time. I'm a big fan of it for the main perspective of it's directly linked to your ability to focus, and your ability to concentrate. Because what is focus? Focus is essentially staying and doing one task effectively for a period of time without being distracted. That is exactly what meditation is. Meditation trains your brain to be able to think about nothing or to focus on one point, which is your brain, your breath, let's say, without getting distracted. And the goal is to, when you get distracted, pull your brain back to focus on that focal point, which is your breath. For other people, it's different things. It could be the feeling of your legs on the chair or whatever it is. It depends what your focal point is when you are meditating. Of course, this is the most sort of generic form of meditation. Other forms that are more nuanced. But overall, meditation, no matter what the medium of meditation that you do, directly links to mental clarity, directly links to focus, mental health, relaxation. It's another thing that takes discipline, and it can directly correlate to more energy, but calm energy, so you can direct it a lot better. One last thing I want to note on meditation. Obviously, whoever asked that question can also follow up with a different question if they think I've missed anything. Is something called yoga nidra, and that's something that I have in my coaching and that I speak to clients about pretty regularly. And this is kind of a form of it's a form of deep rest, but without sleep. So it's called yoga nidra or no non-sleep deep rest. And essentially, this is used when you want to take a nap. Let's say your sleep did fall to the wayside for one night, and you feel like really tired, you can't focus. Doing a 10 to 20 minute session of yoga nidra, which you can just find a YouTube guided session and do that, is it's not it's has the same effect as a nap. If anything, better. It's showed to increase focus by like 50% or something like that for the hours afterwards. So doing that is incredibly powerful as well. So meditation in general, by using, let's say, guided meditations on YouTube or apps like Calm, apps like Headspace are two of my favorite ones. Or Yoga Nidra when you feel tired or unfocused are some great tools. So I'm a big fan.
Cool. Yeah, like I've been doing it for a while now, but quite recently we have started to post more content on TikTok, right? So when I upload content, the endless scroll on TikTok, you see a bunch of type of TikTok trends, right? And one TikTok trend that I've seen recently is basically, it's like somebody who is doing something, and then there's this chatter noise, right? It's like chatter, and then he has his hockey gear on, and he steps out on the ice and becomes quiet. And that's kind of a great representation of what like transcendental meditation is to me, or what meditation is to me. It's like you can feel like the amygdala in your brain is kind of like the guy who's running around trying to put out fires all the time. You're feeling stressed, and when you just give yourself those 20 minutes and you do a meditation session, it's like it just becomes quiet in your head. And when you come out of it, it's like almost as if you're in a new reality almost. You're like, or complete new experience, because all this chatter in your head is basically gone. So
Yeah,
and it's awesome if you do it
100%.
all like multiple times as well over a long period of time. You start to change. Like I was pretty I was anxious about like what's my client thinking about this and so on and so forth, and meditation helped me tremendously to just become a lot calmer and not as stressed and so on and so forth. So I think it's a huge thing for
100%.
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
100%. I actually saw a question in the chat that I actually wanted to touch on because I think it's a good question. And it's one that I actually get a lot. They asked, this was, I think, quite a while ago. They asked, what then would you recommend as priority, diet, sleep, or exercising, if you're not yet in full control of your schedule? Now, as we mentioned, I view sleep as the main priority or the main foundational point of health. That said, there are specific examples where the situation arises where your schedule is not in your full control, and in more, or maybe 7 hours of sleep, and you physically cannot do any more than that because then you'd have no time to work on your business. That's when there's a slight caveat, right? When you have, let's say, a job, or you work international jobs and your hours are messed up and whatever. In that case, I still strongly believe that having the protocols in place to sleep as best as you can in those hours that you do have is crucial. And then once you do have more freedom of time, to immediately allocate that to sleep. Once you do start to make more income, let's say, and then you can allocate more time to prioritizing your health, sleep then must become the first priority. As soon as sleep can be the priority in terms of getting those 8 hours, it should. Because, as I mentioned a couple times already, and I mentioned everywhere, it is directly linked to, it directly positively impacts every function of your brain and body. However, as I was saying, if you don't have that luxury, you don't have that option, then having the other things in place are also key. For example, exercise. If you're very, very strapped on time, if you can, try and get 2 to 3 1 hour sessions of resistance training per week, or it doesn't even need to be an hour session. Let's just say it can be push-ups and pull-ups, if that's all you have, squats, things of that nature. But if you do have a gym, getting a couple sessions a week, full body training, there's a program also on maxpism.com on the course that I made. And also getting your diet in check is also important. So eating at consistent times and eating good quality food is also going to be key. So although sleep is the foundation, and without sleep, the other two pillars, sleep, nutrition and exercise, cannot work as efficiently, it is still so key to prioritize those other two things if that's all you can do at the minute. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. So like basically what we've talked about so far then is like fixing, like prioritizing your sleep, and also we haven't talked too much about the nutrition, but exercise as well, as you just touched upon. That's something that literally anybody and everybody can do, right? It doesn't matter if you're running a business or not. That's literally something that anybody and everybody can do. However,
No.
if you, let's say you're talking to an entrepreneur who already have a business and they have some more money to invest into certain things, like maybe certain services, outsourcing stuff. Like, what are some
No.
like great services or things that you can purchase or buy to save yourself more time or improve your health? I think that could be interesting to discuss as well.
100%. And this is when it gets fun, right? Because this is when you can start to get some cool gadgets and some cool services that really do change your life. So, first one would be so it depends on how much. So it depends on how much they're making and where they're at. But let's just mention the key tools, the key sort of services that you can go ahead and purchase. The first one, in my opinion, would be an Aura Ring or a Whoop Band. Whoop Band do a monthly subscription, although I do prefer Aura Ring. I it's a the UI is just better. The user interface, the user experience is just better. But they're both good in terms of tracking. They're both kind of the gold standard in terms of tracking health metrics, in terms of stress and sleep. So that will be able to tell you with numbers, metrically, how is my health today? And that's very, very important as an entrepreneur because you will know if I'm not feeling good. There must be something wrong. You can check your data, you can check your stats, and then you can make improvements to your daily life outside of that. The next thing is meal prep, outsourcing your food to a third party service, a chef, whatever it may be. Just outsourcing your food so you don't have to cook, because cooking and cleaning takes so much damn time. If you
Mm.
can outsource that, that's an extra 2, maybe 3 hours in some cases that you can allocate to working. That and you can still have good quality food. And also,
Like better food.
when better food,
Yeah.
but also when you get the food and it's in your fridge, it's going to be hard to say, "Oh, I don't want to eat it," because then you're going to waste the food. So you're much less likely to cheat or binge on different stuff because you have the food there. So all you got to do is heat it up and eat it. Um, and so that's probably the second thing I would do is a good quality meal prep service, just because of the time sort of return on investment that you get, but also the health benefits because you're not going to sort of cheat on your nutrition protocols as much. The next thing would be some kind of medical testing. So getting down your blood markers done. Gut health testing is also great because gut health testing allows you to see which foods are best digested by your gut, and your gut and your brain are directly linked. If any of you watching this have followed me for a while, you'll see some videos that I've posted talking about that, how your gut and your brain are directly linked. And so if you have inflammation in your gut from eating foods that perhaps your gut is insensitive to, so your gut microbiome perhaps doesn't digest it very well, that can create brain fog, that can create anxiety, stress, things that are going to impair you from performing at your best in your business. And also it's going to have ripples throughout the rest of your health. You're not going to be able to train as well in the gym, you're not going to recover as well from your training, you're not going to be able to sleep as well, etc., etc. And it just really builds on from there. So that goes for gut health testing. Blood testing as well. You can make refinements to your nutrition and supplement protocols. So really, those are the key ones. I would say an Oura Ring, so any kind of metric tracking device. Then it was the meal prep services. Then some kind of medical testing to dial in your health further. Some key bonuses in there. Blue light blockers are amazing because if you do need to work later hours, let's say you're working a 9 to 5 job and you want to build your business before and after, in the evening time, you want to avoid as much blue light as possible. Blue light blockers are going to be great for that. If you live in a dark place in the world, getting some kind of SAD therapy lamp or some kind of really strong blue light that you can use before the sun comes out, doing that as well. So those are the sort of key gadgets and the key tools that are, in my opinion, the most effective for optimizing health.
And then like when you do those health tests as well, then you can kind of do like a personalized type of supplement implementation, or you can like change your diet accordingly to what you need. Know you now know from the biomarkers that, hey, I need to get more of this into my body, or I need more fibers into my body because my stool is not the best, or whatever it might be, right? Or
Yeah.
my I need to improve my eat this type of vitamin because my blood markers are not good enough, or whatever. So, and that's something that you have helped me with as well, to just create those specific types of supplementations for that. And like a great
100%.
supplementation for that we haven't talked about is athletic greens, right? Which is awesome. I enjoy that a ton.
Ah, yes, Athletic Greens is cool. It's a great sort of pre and probiotic mineral and vitamins drink that actually tastes surprisingly good. It's a green juice essentially, but it doesn't taste like a green juice. It tastes very good. It tastes like a coconut kind of tropical flavor thing. It's very low in calories and very beneficial for not only gut health, cognitive function, et cetera, et cetera, just for your overall health because of the mineral and vitamin sort of profiles of it. So definitely that's another one that I would go ahead and get, because it can also, when you have that, you don't need to think as much of, what vegetables am I getting when. Obviously, you should still eat vegetables. You should still prioritize a whole diet, but it can relax you a little bit that you're getting good minerals, a good amount of minerals and vitamins intake, being taken in earlier on in the day. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Cool. We have some questions here as well.
Mm.
Let's see. We have a long question here. I haven't read it yet, but it says, "I have handled stress with being more grateful. Let's see, little things life instead of thinking." Let's see here. Commodity sports give discipline. Okay, it wasn't a question really. Here we have a direct question: how to recover from a burnout? Do you have an
Interesting. Burnout is complicated because it depends what the burnout is. And burnout comes in many different ways, and people often diagnose burnout as burnout, but it can sometimes be other things. So, when in the context of my answer, I am going to assume you are talking from a physical burnout where you constantly feel mentally fatigued, potentially physically fatigued as well, and you are falling sick, because those are the first, the main signs that burnout are coming, or that you're being hit with burnout. And one of the main tools you can use for that, Aura Ring. Max, I think you'll remember when you fell ill back in November. Aura actually showed a decrease in your HRV and an increase in your resting heart rate a day before you fell sick. So we could actually see that in the metrics happening. And that's something that you can look at, and looking at recovery scores to deal with that. If you can keep recovery scores high by sleeping better, by not overloading with stress, by managing the different stress markers, doing those things are going to help you sort of prevent burnout. Now, let's say you've already burnt out. You feel horrible on a day-to-day basis. Your brain is just not functioning. You're tired. It's hard to get out of bed. Many things that could be going wrong there. And you need to be very honest with yourself when assessing your current situation. Honesty and self-awareness are key. You have to assess, first of all, sleep. Go through the main pillars. Sleep. Okay. Am I sleeping enough time? Am I in bed at least 8 hours? At least. If the answer to that is yes, and you are tracking your sleep and you are seeing that, your metrics are fine, so it's not your sleep. Okay. You have to move on to the next thing. Gut health is another big, 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 big pillar, and that's something that I spoke about, earlier on in this live stream when there were less people in here. But gut health is a big one. If you have issues with your nutrition, you'll get this burnout feeling coming up a lot and a lot, because that's your immune system essentially giving out. Again, falling sick is another one. So recovering from burnout, prioritize a few days of 9 hours, if possible, of sleep. Very good quality. Prioritize that out, and make sure that you're not eating 4 hours before those sort of sleep sessions, and you're avoiding blue light as much as possible before that sleep as well. So prioritize your sleep. If you are overweight, eat in a calorie deficit for a few days. So eat less food. Perhaps do some intermittent fasting. So skip breakfast, and eat 2 meals. This will allow for more autophagy, cleaning of bad bacteria in your gut, but also all over your body. That's going to help with that. So eat, of course, clean foods, and reduce processed sugars. That's nutrition, and also try and get some activity and some personal sort of development in. Get some meditation going to improve mental clarity, mental health. Do some exercise, whether it be going for a couple of walks in the sunlight. Sunlight is the next big pillar that I would mention for recovering from burnout. You want to get it at night when the sun is setting and in the morning. If you are already burnt out, prioritize extra time. I usually say 5 to 10 minutes of sunlight. Now you want to say 20 to 30 minutes in the sun, walking, being out in nature, assuming you're in good health and you're able to do that. And those are really the core pillars. If you're still suffering from burnout, you can, go ahead and message me on Instagram. I can get a more specific understanding of where you're at, and I'll give you pointers with that. So my Instagram is just at Youakim, at first name, last name. But those are the key things that you want to focus on. To reiterate, sleep longer. Um, do not eat before you sleep for 3-4 hours. Get as much sunlight as you can. If you're overweight, eat in a calorie deficit. If you're underweight, eat more calories in a calorie surplus, because those are often, key concepts. And then also gut health. So if you think it may be gut health, that's slightly harder to fix. But some key things: intermittent fasting can be a good thing to try. Eliminating processed sugars, fried foods, deep fried foods, and eliminating gluten is often one that I find for a lot of people to be a good place to start. You may start to feel more energized and more mentally clear from there.
Awesome. Cool. Good stuff. Value bombs all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
But okay, and I want to say this as well, right? I have no affiliation with you. I'm a client of yours, but I recommend people to you as often as soon as I can, as I notice that people are interested in like work with somebody, or at least I think any entrepreneur that has like some sustainable cash flow should start to invest in some type of coach as soon as possible. Um, but when do you think that is like a good time to like reinvest some money to get help from somebody like yourself? And what does that process look like? How does it work? If somebody's watching it right now and they're like, I want to work with Gio, or I'm interested, I'm making $10,000 per month. Like, how does that work? Do they go to your website and like book a call, or like how does that work?
Yeah. So the best ways, you can go to my website, geoyouakim.com, booking a call there. Another really good way is my Instagram. That's where most of my traffic funnels through. And most of my interactions, most of my calls are booked, just because I can have that personal interaction in the DMs, understand the situation a bit better. So for me personally, Instagram, you can always shoot me a DM on there, and I'm always available. When is the right time? That's varies from person to person, of course, because people have different expenses, people have different situations. But really, once you start hitting, 10K, the sort of six-figure mark and up, I think it's a really good time to do that, because, as I've mentioned many, many times, and I'm not going to go on too much, is when you optimize your health, it directly improves your business. Your business is an extension of you. If you're performing well, your business is going to perform well, your team is going to perform well, and everything else is going to fall into place. So it's a good investment to make, when you start hitting that six figures, when you're looking to scale to the multi-six and seven figures. That's always a really good time.
Awesome. Cool. Is
Um, I
there?
actually saw
Yeah.
I actually saw an interesting debate going on here, talking about coffee and tea. Do, do, do,
Yes.
do. Yeah,
Right
so
here.
Billy Jr. said, I have a question. Isn't green tea better than coffee for focus? Um, so, what we're talking about here when we're talking about green tea and we're talking about coffee is we're talking about caffeine specifically. They both have caffeine. Whether one or the other is going to be better for focus is going to be dependent on the individual, and also dependent on how you take those things in. If you are drinking coffee first thing in the morning, you may well feel very focused, very dialed in for the first few hours. But what you typically have is, when you drink it first thing in the morning, you have an energy crash later on in the day. So you will feel more tired later on there. So you may think, oh, I'm not as focused throughout the entire day. Green tea has less caffeine than coffee, typically sort of per 100 milliliters per cup, less caffeine. So that effect will be less drastic. However, coffee typically does have, I'm talking black coffee, typically does have more caffeine. Now, caffeine is directly linked and directly impact your drive, your focus, your ability to concentrate, your energy levels, of course, and things of that nature. there's different ways that you can drink coffee. The protocol that I abide by myself and that I tell clients who do drink coffee, Max personally doesn't drink coffee, but
Not
clients that
anymore. I
I
was a
work with,
huge coffee addict before.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But you were drinking a bit too much coffee, you could argue.
yeah. I was for
I
sure.
think, if I remember correctly, yeah. So what I would do is I would limit it to two coffees a day. The first coffee, you don't want to drink it in the first 1.5 to 2 hours of being awake. This will eliminate the crash that you get later on the day. I'm not going to dive into why on this. I have videos on my Instagram talking about that, and it's just going to bore you guys to death. So essentially, avoid the coffee first or green tea for the first hour and a half of 2 hours after waking up. If you do drink coffee, you feel energized, you feel sort of mentally wired, but you don't feel you feel a bit jittery. What you can add to coffee is L-theanine, 200 milligrams in your coffee. It's just a powder. You put it in, you mix it, and that's going to give you a very sort of calm and focused energy, which is a great tool. But coffee as a, let's say, performance enhancer for entrepreneurs is absolutely awesome. And whether you prefer green tea or you like coffee, they're both great options. But just understand that coffee does have a higher level of caffeine, so it's better. Um, One last note on coffee: do not drink coffee. Let's say don't drink coffee 10 to 12 hours before you sleep, because caffeine has a quarter life of about 12 hours. Quarter life is essentially the amount of time a chemical takes to decrease to a quarter of its strength or potency. So you want to avoid caffeine for the 12 hours of the day, the last 12 hours of the day before sleeping.
Another question that I've found interesting: negative concentration, energy, focus effects from nicotine.
Okay. This entirely depends on where you're getting your nicotine from. So, nicotine, funnily enough, has actually been shown to be a great cognitive performance enhancer in terms of your ability to focus, your ability to concentrate, um, your ability to make decisions. Nicotine is actually surprisingly good for that. Depends where you're getting your nicotine from. Something like, and also how much nicotine you're ingesting or you're taking in. Vapes do not touch those things. They have been shown to decrease testosterone, and they are overall very bad for your health. And there are so many unknowns in terms of health from vapes. So many unknowns. We don't know where it's heading. We'll see in 20, 30 years. A lot of chemicals that most of us in this live stream cannot pronounce. And so it's probably better off not putting those in your body. Cigarettes and cigars. I hope it goes without saying. You shouldn't be smoking cigarettes or cigars. Obviously, the occasional cigar here and there, whatever. It is what it is. That's your personal decision. But you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes. It's incredibly poor for your health, your cardiovascular health. I mean, we don't need to get into this. We're not in the 1960s. Everyone
Yeah.
knows how bad tobacco is to smoke and certainly to inhale. Yes, they have nicotine, but there are better forms of ingesting nicotine.
One thing with
The most popular.
with smoking though is that with a cigarette you're smoking something with I don't know how many compounds there is in a cigarette, a ton of like just shit essentially, and you're inhaling it into your lungs, right? So it's bad, and cigars are bad as well. It's still nicotine. You still have smoke in your mouth, but at least you're not inhaling it,
You don't inhale. No.
and also the cigar is only like organic tobacco. You're not getting all the other stuff essentially. I don't know if it
Yeah.
makes it better, but at least I would never smoke a cigarette ever again. I haven't smoked cigarettes. I
Yeah.
just did when I was younger a couple of times just to try it out, right? But cigars I
Yeah.
actually enjoy. You can do that for the fun occasion, but it might be just myself fooling myself that this is healthier than a cigarette, but it makes kind
Yeah.
of sense
So
that it's organic or it's actually tobacco that you're smoking, not additives.
yeah, yes, and no. What I would say to let me just finish the last thing I was going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
and then I'll get on to cigarettes versus cigars. So the last thing I was going to say is the most popular way to intake nicotine when you're looking to use it as a sort of performance enhancer is through Nicorette nicotine gum. However, you need to be very careful that when you are chewing the nicotine gum, that you don't use it too much. And I want to stress this point very, very carefully. When you do or you are looking to use nicotine as a performance enhancer, use it in very careful moderation. Very careful moderation. because you do not want to get a nicotine addiction, which will lead you down very bad paths for your health, increased blood pressure, etc., etc. Keep it in moderation. Keep it a couple times a week. If you have to be very dialed in, Nicorette is probably your best bet. Yeah, Einstein and Nikola
Also,
Tesla did love their tobacco. That is true.
but also like snus, right? It's something we have here in Sweden. You know what snus is?
Yeah, we have snus. Yeah.
Like a small nicotine pouch
Snus
that you
is
put
like
in the.
snus is essentially a pouch made of, I can't remember what it's made of, but it essentially something that you put in your lip, over sort of in between your gum and your lip, and the nicotine, the fabric that it's made of allows nicotine to pass through very well, and your gum is the most sort of reactive place to get chemicals to pass through. So when chemicals pass through your gum, they go into your bloodstream much quicker.
Mm.
That's why you see certain drug addicts putting drugs in their gum, because it goes in quicker. Same idea with snus. You put the snus in there, the nicotine comes quick. Typically, snus is stronger than most Nicorette, though, and most cigarettes and vapes and things of that nature. So yeah, snooze is another thing, but again, use it with great caution. And it's not something I typically endorse, because you can start to get down the wrong path very quickly.
Yeah, like the thing like that you said, or like caffeine and nicotine, or like energy enhancers and actually drugs that can help you. But the thing is though that you only get that as long as you use it, right? So if you use it heavily and then stop, then you're gonna crash essentially, or at least that was what happened with me. I used caffeine
With
heavily and nicotine
Yeah,
heavily, and then I just stopped cold turkey, and I felt
yeah,
like shit for a long period of time, essentially.
yeah. So the interesting thing is, I used to have that opinion. Nicotine is different. Nicotine, I tread very carefully when talking about nicotine, but caffeine specifically, there's different things you can do to reduce the amount of dependency you have on nicotine. The main one being delaying the impact. Sorry, not nicotine, caffeine. My apologies. The main thing you can do to reduce the dependency on caffeine is to not is to delay the intake of caffeine for the first few hours of the day. If you're drinking caffeine right after waking up, you're sending a signal to your circadian rhythm that you actually need that to feel energized. If you can get up, go through your morning routine, whatever it may be, view your morning sunlight, which is something I'm a big advocate of, cold exposure, another thing I'm a big advocate of. If you can do those things and get to work and do some work before you ingest your caffeine, you're actually sending very strong signals to your brain to not associate the intake of caffeine with needing the caffeine to feel energized. And so by delaying that, you actually reduce the dependency a lot. Nicotine, again, is a very tricky subject, so I don't want to comment on that in terms of the dependency and whatnot. But I will say is, if you do use nicotine, as Max said, you got to. And another thing is, if you use it in moderation, you won't be as dependent on it. That's something we need to note. But if you're going to use it very moderately, to where you don't start to feel a dependency. If you need to use it multiple times a week and you start to feel that you need to use it more and more, that's probably a good sign you should stop, and it's not for you.
Yeah.
Um, and so also another quick distinction I would just want to make. Caffeine has been shown to be, yes, a cognitive enhancer, but also an energy enhancer, because it blocks adenosine, which is one of the chemicals related to your sleep. Nicotine is more so just a cognitive enhancer. When you ingest nicotine, your neurons actually just fire quicker and you make decisions quicker and you're more just essentially wired. Caffeine, you get that, but you also get energy enhancements.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we had another question here regarding like psychedelics and LSD and DMT. Maybe that's out of the scope of this interview. But do you have anything you wanna talk about on that? Maybe.
Um, so a lot of renowned people use psychedelics and are big proponents of it.
Hmm.
It's outside the scope of my research. It's outside the scope of my work. So I'm not gonna, the comment I have, any comments I have on psychedelics is not a professional one. Is not a piece of advice I'm giving. But there's people who seem to think that it can help. But again,
Yeah,
that's not my area of expertise.
with a lot of like PTSD stuff and stuff like that, right? There is a medical field for
Mm.
it. Yeah, but it's not.
Creativity as well. Creativity. Like I've heard some of the most effective ones, rather than doing big trips of them, is microdosing LSE and not LSE, LSD and mushrooms as well. If you microdose those to where you don't have a trip, but it makes you feel relaxed and enhances your creativity. That's something that people in the Netherlands do a lot, because in Amsterdam you can get those pretty easily.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So we had some more questions here. We've talked quite a bit about caffeine already, but like taking 3 cups of coffee a day, so about 30 grams of caffeine, is that normal? Is that a good amount?
30 grams of caffeine. So I don't think you're drinking 30 grams of caffeine, because a typical cup of coffee has about 100. If it's a strong cup of coffee, it has about 120, 100 milligrams of caffeine in that cup. I think
Okay.
you mean 30 grams of coffee powder. That's different. I'm not sure. I've actually never weighed coffee powder, but you don't want to drink more than 400 milligrams of caffeine a day. More than 400, you're getting into treacherous territory with your blood pressure and things of that nature, and dependency issues as well. So you want to keep it to below 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine. You're going to have to kind of do a bit of maths and do a bit of research to see how that applies to the coffee you're drinking, whether it's a black coffee, espresso, whatever it may be. Um, so yeah, you want to do less than 300 to 400 milligrams, and then also you don't want to drink coffee sort of in the afternoon, nor in the first couple hours of waking. So if you have 1 or 2 cups, maybe three, in between the hours of 12 hours before you go to sleep and 2 hours after you wake up, that middle period of the day, there shouldn't be anything necessarily wrong with that, unless you start to feel dependent. If you do feel dependent, tailor it back and dial it back, and start to reduce that dependency.
Gotcha. Another question, Billy. Like dopamine, like it's hard to stop being rely upon dopamine from your phone. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a big issue. Dopamine is one of the most powerful neurotransmitters that we have in our brain, or that influence our daily actions. Managing it is very important, because if you so this is a study I actually mention a lot, but it's one I want to mention to you, Billy, and also anyone else watching this live stream. There's a study that they did in rodents. I can't remember if it was rats or mice, that showed that when the reason they did this is because rodents have very similar dopamine sort of neural pathways to humans. And so what they showed is that when they put them in a cage next to a lever, and if they pressed the lever, they could get whatever they wanted in terms of mating partners, food, toys, whatever it is. And they let them do that for a few days. Then after that, they took them away and they put them on the other side of the cage. The rats were so dopamine depleted that they didn't want to walk to the other side of the cage and hit the lever anymore, because it was too much effort. So they just sat there and like a potato and just stayed there, because their brain was so dopamine depleted. And dopamine is associated with drive, with motivation, with focus, with energy, and a bunch of other good stuff. If you can channel how you get your dopamine, you can greatly improve how you act as a human being. What I mean by that, if you do challenging things that give you dopamine and long-lasting dopamine effects after you've done that thing, your brain will start to rewire how it essentially releases dopamine. So, for example, doing hard exercise, cold exposure, things that are just genuinely uncomfortable that make you feel good afterwards, a hard bout of work. Those things are great. And I say all this to say that your phone, especially when you look through Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be, the color, the sounds, the ease of use of just doing this, and every time you swipe, you get another rush of dopamine. And it's a very small, acute spike of dopamine that then goes back down and back up and back down and back up. And it's a complete mess for your dopaminergic sort of neural pathways. So couple tools you can do to reduce this, and this is something you want to fix ASAP, because if your dopamine, because also you'll be driven to do what gives you dopamine rushes. So, watching porn, for example, is a big one for young guys. Using phone is another one, as you mentioned, and video games. You want to start to manage those a lot. So, what you want to do on your phone, there's a couple things that you can do. One of my favorite is an app called Opal, OPAL, and this will allow you to block certain apps on your phone. Not like any of that screen time BS that the Apple settings allows you to do, which doesn't work at all because you can just undo it. Opal doesn't let you undo it unless you delete the app. But if you're deleting the app, then you really have no self-respect for yourself because you got to respect it. If it says you can't go on, you cannot go on. So get Opal, OPAL, and set up an account. It's free, and you can block out time to where you cannot use these apps, or you could also only allow the apps to run for a certain amount of time, and then it blocks it for the rest of the day. This is going to be a great way to start to reduce the time you spend on your phone, especially on the apps that you are most addicted to. I'm going to guess, since you're about 20 years old, that's going to be Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, because those were the same things that I struggled with just a few years ago. Um, Another thing is doing the things I mentioned earlier that are hard and that give a dopaminergic effect. Cold exposure, hard exercise that you don't enjoy, like running is for me. That's my fix of dopamine, and also doing hard work. Another thing, someone mentioned it in the comments, changing your phone filter, the color to black and white, makes it really uncomfortable to look at. And so you actually want to spend less time on your phone when your whole screen is just black and white. So you can do that if you have an iPhone. You can just do that by going to accessibility settings, filters, and then you can just turn on grayscale, I think is what it's called. And those are some great ways to start to reduce your phone. But also, last thing, do not use your phone for the first few hours of the day, if possible. Of course, if you have to use it for work, different story. But certainly for the first hour of your day, you should not be on your phone. Because if you are, just the rush of notifications you get in the morning is going to hit you with a great dopamine spike. It's going to increase your cortisol, but not in ways that we want you to do that. For example, like cold exposure, which does the same thing, but that wires your brain to enjoy doing hard things rather than looking at your phone, and getting that same fix from that will make you into a lazy sack of potatoes for the rest of the day.
That's cool. Okay, we have a question here as well. We already talked quite a bit about microbiome, but basically, what is the importance of the microbiome? I have IBS and started experimenting with different diets when I was 15. He's 17 now. Any tips on improving the microbiome, like fermented foods and so on?
So, yeah, sorry, I'm just rereading the question. I have IBS, started experimenting. Okay. So, wow, you started experimenting with gut health at 15 and now you're 17. That's very young to be interested in gut health. I commend you, good sir. Or good woman, I'm not sure. Okay, so tips for improving gut microbiome. Actually, there's four main pillars. I used to say there's three, now I think that there's four. The first one is two you can combine in one. You mentioned fermented foods. So that's going to be kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, bio live yogurt, so with live bacteria in it, a bunch of other fermented foods that are slipping my mind. Eat those 2 to 3 times a day, 2 or 3 servings per day as well, preferably at each meal. That's the first thing. Fiber is another thing. Prebiotics, very very important to intake a lot of fiber because that's going to smoothen out digestive tract. Your digestive tract. It's going to make digestion easier. Your stool is going to be better, and it's going to allow you to essentially have better digestion, especially when you have IBS. The next thing is exercise, regular exercise. And the reason regular is because your gut health being tied to your brain is also heavily dependent on your circadian rhythm. If you exercise at the same time throughout the weeks, your circadian rhythm will adapt to that. And as a result, the bacteria in your gut will start to operate a lot better. And then the last thing would be getting a gut health test, a food insensitivity test, and avoiding those foods that you get there, and eating foods that promote the production of good bacteria in your gut. That's something that I do with all of my clients as well. If you're not sure what companies to look at, Viome, if you're in the States, is good. If you're pretty much anywhere else in the world, I like Omnos. They're super quick. They're super efficient. Actually, Max
Omnos.com,
was the
right?
first. Omnos.com. Actually, Max was the first client I used Omnos with. I got it from a recommendation from another friend of mine who's also a coach himself, and the service blew my mind. It was very, very efficient. So looking at a company like that as well is good. And then as a result, you're going to get a list of foods that your gut bacteria doesn't digest as well, and a list of food that your gut that will promote the production of good bacteria. And so adhering to those in your diet will be key. One last thing, actually, the fifth pillar is sleep. If you're underslept, the production of bad bacteria in your, I say bad, it's just a general term. We can get more specific, but it's just easier for me to explain that way. When you're underslept, the production of bad bacteria in your gut goes up and the production of good bacteria goes down. You start to get symptoms of a leaky gut, whereby you can have that bad bacteria sleep into your bloodstream up through your brain, and you start to get foggy, you start to get uh, digestive issues. And the last thing is alcohol. You want to avoid alcohol at all costs. Alcohol is very detrimental to gut health. If you have IBS, if you have leaky gut, if you have any of these gut-related syndromes, you want to avoid alcohol at all costs because it does very much the same effects that I just mentioned now. Produces bad bacteria. It allows them. It damages the epithelial lining of the gut. That's essentially the lining of sort of your gut walls, allowing bad bacteria to flow into your bloodstream, and that's a very bad situation. So, avoiding alcohol, improving sleep, exercising at the correct times, eating high fiber diet and high fiber food diet, and avoiding food insensitivities. That's your checklist right there.
Yeah, so basically eating better, as you said, but also like removing if you're drinking a ton of soda or chewing tobacco or using snus, you're getting tobacco into your stomach, or
Mm.
like you take medicines on the regular. I guess that can like affect it as well. So like remove the bad stuff, implement more good stuff.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Here, I am in a cutting phase right now, and some of my bodybuilder friends told me to take L-carnitine,
Carnitine, L-carnitine.
carnitine, T3 apple cider vinegar, cane, multivitamin plus creatine. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends why you're taking those supplements. Um, so you mentioned you're in a cutting phase, but I mean, if you can elaborate a bit longer in the chat as to why you should be taking those things for, like, what's the context of the question? Like, is it for do you want to take those supplements for better physical performance, for a specific purpose in your cut? Is it a mental enhancement that you're looking for, or is it just someone told you to take that supplement stack? If you could just elaborate a bit more, I can give you a better answer.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting a little bit over time here now as well, but we have a question here. Maybe this can be like the final one, and then I can leave the word over to you as well, Gio, if you have anything you want to cover. But basically about Huel. So would prepared meals like Huel be a good investment?
Mm. So Huel is a remarkably cheaper investment to meal prep services, for example. Huel is something that I've used myself. They taste okay, not the best thing I've ever tasted in the world, but it's fine, and it does the job when you're time constrained. Another issue is that when you do drink Huel, make sure to drink a lot of water with it because actually it acts like a bit of a sponge and kind of get dehydrated from it. So yeah, Huel is good macronutrients. They have two different kinds. They have one with the black edition where it's got slightly more protein, and then the white edition which is like 30 grams of protein as opposed to 40. So yeah, it's good. I'm a fan of it. I don't enjoy the taste too much, so I don't drink it anymore. But if it's something that you need to be more time efficient, it can be great.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, and it's relatively cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Do you have any like final words? Sounds like I'm gonna execute you or something. But do you have any final things you want to say or go over? Or
Um, Final words I want to say. Before I say my final words, AWX, correct. Porn is for losers. I like that. Uh, the final words. Yeah, I mean, overall, prioritize your health, guys. It's important, believe me. And if you don't realize it now, you're going to realize it in a few years when you crash and you're not able to work as well as you want to. and you know, it can definitely be something that will impede you from reaching where you want to get to. So channeling that discipline, channeling the hits of dopamine that you get from doing good stuff for your health will pay great benefits in other aspects of your life, including your business. And if you can think better and you can act better, you will make more money and your business will be better. And don't forget, your business is an extension of yourself. So those are my final words. For Yavart Singh, just to elaborate on that question, I know I didn't really give you an answer. You can go ahead and send me a DM on Instagram. And this goes for anyone else watching. If you have any other questions that you don't think I got to, go ahead. Just shoot them to me on Instagram and I'll be more than happy to give an elaborate response.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely go and follow Gio. You can just search his name on whatever platform. And he's going more into YouTube now as well. He also has a website with the newsletters. You can sign up for that. Instagram as mentioned, and he also has a complete module inside of the free SMA course in module number 5 that you guys can watch as well. So yeah, thank you for jumping on the call, Gio, and
Yeah.
we talk soon.
My pleasure. Bye bye.